Hi and welcome to my food favourites for the month of June. I'm going to start off with my food read of the month, and it is Lucky Peach magazine. Lucky Peach is a quarterly food writing journal which was founded by restaurateur David Chang of Momofuku fame. And each issue is themed. This is the versus issue and this is the faux issue. I bought both of them when I visited New York City in late May, early June. The writing in Lucky Peach generally is really energetic, and above all it's interesting. The writers are actually given enough space for an in-depth approach to the topics. While some stories can lag a little bit, on the whole they're really effective. There are recipes in Lucky Peach, but it's not a recipe-focused food magazine like a lot of magazines are. It's very much based on food writing. It's an ideal read for someone who, like me, sees food as a way of providing historical, anthropological and social insights into a culture or a society or a country. For example, with the faux issue, it's ostensibly a themed issue dedicated to pho, which is usually a beef-based noodle soup from Vietnam. But I learned so much about Vietnam, about its history, about the people who live there, about its culture, the impact that the various political and social upheavals that have affected Vietnam have affected its food. There were some really interesting profiles of people who have remained living in Vietnam during and after the Vietnam War, and also those who emigrated as a result of the Vietnam War to countries around the world. And I felt like I learned so much about Vietnam as a country and as a polity, and about its people as well, not just about pho. So that's really interesting, and the features were lengthy enough to enable me to get a quite in-depth overview through the theme of food. In the versus issue, one article that I found particularly moving was an article by Lucas Peterson on disordered eating. It was incredibly moving, and I think anyone who has ever had difficulties with food and difficulties with accepting their bodies and their appetites will find that it resonates for them in some way. It was a very touching article. I've actually written a full blog post about Lucky Peach, and with more details about what I perceive its strengths and weaknesses to be. I think one of the distinctive things about it is its style. It's quite rebellious and almost abrasive at times, and it's potentially slightly off-putting for some people. I will leave a link to the full blog post below so that you can get more insights into my views on Lucky Peach. It's produced some excellent writing, and I think it's definitely worth a look if you're interested in food writing and culture and history and so on, all coming from food. So that's Lucky Peach magazine. You can buy it on Amazon if you can't get it in shops near you. I've never seen it in a shop in the UK. I was just talking about Lucky Peach magazine, which was founded by David Chang, who also founded the Momofuku chain of restaurants, and my restaurant favourite of the month is the Momofuku noodle bar, which I visited while in New York City. My boyfriend actually suggested we go to it because we had both enjoyed the sambar so much, and I mentioned the sambar in the previous month's food favourites. We had to wait for a long time, about an hour, to be seated, but we didn't have anything to do, so we just hung out outside, and the food was definitely worth the wait. We shared the chicken meatball bao buns, which were served with paprika mayonnaise, and I usually find chicken a bit dull, a bit bland, but these meatballs were really tender, and they had a bit of fresh spicy heat from the jalapeno chili, and were full of herbal flavour, and the buns were really soft and delicious as well. The Mayan prawns, which we also had, were absolutely beautiful. This sweet prawn flesh contrasting with the sharp chili garlic oil which they were doused in, and on this bed of lettuce puree, which was this really pleasant, mild contrast to the spiciness of the prawns. It was a really beautiful dish. And finally we had the chilled spicy noodles, which were actually room temperature, not cold, with Sichuan sausage, and it was a bowl full of contrasts that really harmonized to create something incredibly well balanced and incredibly interesting and delicious to eat. There were the bouncy noodles, crunchy roasted cashews with their deep, toasty, nutty flavor, Sichuan sausage, which is both spicy and sweet, and the slightly chewy, crisp texture of the sausage, and then finally the bright Thai basil, which lended a slightly aniseedy flavor. We were warned that this dish was very spicy, but actually I thought it was okay. It was not absolutely palate numbing. There was definitely heat there, but it was certainly manageable for me anyway. So Momofuku Noodle Bar is another amazing restaurant that I would eat at all the time if it was located in London, and I would definitely recommend going to visit it if you're in New York City. Having just showered Momofuku with praise, I did want to give a quick shout out to Oaxaca as an honourable mention in this month's favourites roundup. I mentioned Oaxaca, which is a chain of Mexican restaurants in the UK, in my first ever food favourites video. I recently took my mother there, and she went in saying, oh, you know, I don't really like Mexican food, and came out full of praise for the food, the freshness of it, the variety, how beautifully it was presented. She loved it. And they have some new additions to the menu and specials, such as a pea and mint empanada and chorizo and onion tacos, which are absolutely worth trying. So I did want to mention Oaxaca because I've enjoyed some fantastic meals there in June. My cookbook of the month is A Girl and Her Greens by April Bloomfield, and particularly I also wanted to mention it because it has my dish of the month, which is the roasted whole baby turnips. April Bloomfield is a Birmingham-born chef, and she's currently based in New York. She's best known for her gastropub, The Spotted Pig, and also the restaurant The Breslin there, and they have a Michelin star each. Girl and Her Greens has inspired me to start cooking seasonally and locally and using all kinds of vegetables that I haven't used before. It's a celebration of seasonal vegetable cookery, and most of the recipes are vegetarian. There are a few with meat more towards the end, particularly pork. Bloomfield's approach to vegetable cooking has been described as treating them like meat. She's not afraid to absolutely baste vegetables in oil, drizzle them in butter and bathe them in cream, all in one recipe. And it's definitely restaurant cooking in that respect. Although she sometimes overloads recipes with these rich and fatty ingredients, to my taste anyway, the food has inspired me to cook new and unfamiliar vegetables and to actively go looking for them, to actively find new vegetables to cook and eat. So I made the recipe for whole roast baby turnips, in which the greens are cooked with the roots, with the bulbs of the turnip, and it's such a simple recipe, just oil, salt and baby turnips, halved, seared in a hot pan and then finished in the oven until tender. The turnip roots become this honey gold colour, crisp on the edges with a fluffy, delicately creamy centre, and the greens become completely crisp and crunchy, and I guess a little bit like kale crisps in texture. And despite its simplicity, the dish is very original. I've not seen something like it. I've not seen a method of cooking baby turnips in this way, and it really celebrates and respects the vegetable. And you don't tend to think of turnips as very exciting or enticing, but this really was. And you tend to think of turnips as quite wintry fare, and this was definitely very spring-like. Its greatness lies in that very simplicity of the recipe. It's a wonderful, wonderful side dish, but I'd also wholeheartedly recommend the whole cookbook to anyone looking for inspiration to cook vegetables. The passion that she writes with just leaps out at you, and if some of the recipes are too rich, you can also always make adjustments to them. So that's A Girl and Her Greens by April Bloomfield. My efforts to eat seasonally and locally have definitely been helped along by the discovery of Farm Direct, which was introduced to me by a friend. It's a weekly online food ordering service which enables people to buy fruit and vegetables, and also meat, fish and dairy produce directly from the farms which produce them. I'm just going to show the basket of food that I ordered this week. That's not all of it actually, I did order a bit more, but it's already been put in the fridge or the cupboards. The great thing about Farm Direct is that you are ordering seasonal produce from British farms and pretty much directly from the farmer, which is all excellent. But the thing I really like from a culinary perspective is that you can get hold of things that you just don't find in the supermarket, some baby vegetables for example, or some soft fruits like these gooseberries, which are incredibly expensive in supermarkets. And I also bought some gorgeous tomatoes, little red and green zebra striped tomatoes, which were delicious, but also something unusual, something I just wouldn't see in Sainsbury's. Another really convenient thing is that Farm Direct delivers the produce straight to your door, so you don't have to go carting it round, which can sometimes be a problem if you're visiting a market, especially if you're visiting one that's not necessarily that close to your house. You need to get all of it back, and if you're living in London you need to get it back probably by public transport. So this delivers straight to your door. The food is also really fresh and is delivered in peak condition. So if you're interested in exploring new kinds of food and in buying direct from farmers, supporting British farmers and producers without necessarily going through supermarkets, or you want access to things that you wouldn't find in the shops, then I would say definitely have a look at Farm Direct's website. It's been a great help and helped me find all the lovely vegetables from A Girl and Her Greens. So I've been really inspired by both of that. Another food-related service, I suppose, that I've taken advantage of recently is Eat Your Books. Eat Your Books is an indexing and library database service that indexes lots of cookbooks from around the world and puts them online into a searchable database. It indexes recipes from not just cookbooks but also magazines and food websites, and you can search the recipes by various criteria such as ingredient, recipe type, ethnicity, and so on. You can personalize your bookshelf, so it can be based on all the cookbooks and magazines that you own, and it's a great service for anyone who, like me, has a lot of cookbooks and wants to be inspired to use them a bit more. It's also really helpful for people who maybe have a garden or access to a lot of fruit and vegetables, if they want to find recipes to use them up, for example. The indexing on the Eat Your Books website lists the ingredients used in each recipe. So if you're at work, for example, and you know you are planning to cook something, you can quickly have a look in the index on the Eat Your Books website and pick up any ingredients you need to on the way home, so it's really helpful in that respect. Or if you have something that's been lying around in your cupboards for ages and ages, like I have a bag of polenta that just really needs to be used up, you can look up all the recipes you have using that ingredient and find something that suits you from all the cookbooks and magazines that you have. So it basically searches them for you. Not every single cookbook or magazine in the world has been indexed. You can request for them to be indexed though, and you can also volunteer to index them yourself, which seems like a lot of work. You do pay for the subscription. You can have up to 5 books on your bookshelf for free, but any beyond that you do have to pay for it. But it's not that expensive for a year, and it's already, even though I've not had it that long, been really helpful in enabling me to explore my cookbooks more thoroughly than I have. So I think it's really worth it. I don't know if I've explained how it works that well, but have a quick look on the website if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, and you can just try it out and see how it works with 5 cookbooks for free, and see if you would be interested in having it for your entire collection. But I found it really helpful and really useful when I'm at work and away from the cookbooks, and I think, oh, what was that thing I needed to pick up? So Eat Your Books, great recipe indexing and ingredient database. The next thing I'm going to mention is this Pip and Nut Honey Cinnamon Cashew Butter. And I mentioned in last month's food favorite video that I really like almond butter, and I talked about my favourite almond butter brand, and I picked up this nut butter on a whim at Sainsbury's because it was on offer. It's really smooth and creamy, much more so than other unprocessed nut butters I've tried. It does have a little bit of coconut oil in there which helps smoothen it out, although it is mostly cashews. So it says here 91.6% cashews, 4% honey, and then a bit of coconut oil, cinnamon and sea salt. Really lovely for breakfast. It's obviously a little sweeter than a plain nut butter because of the honey, and the cinnamon isn't too overpowering, which I think is really good because cinnamon can be quite a strong flavour. It adds some interest to a normal nut butter, and as it turns out, cashews are a beautiful foil for the honey and cinnamon flavour. It tastes very buttery and rich and creamy. It's really good. And there is a touch of sea salt in there which balances it out and harmonizes all the flavors. So I think if you see this, it's worth checking out if you like cashews, and if you like the sound of it. I definitely would get it again, although maybe I'd wait till it was on offer. It's not the cheapest of the nut butters out there, but really delicious. That's pippa nut, honey cinnamon cashew butter. And the last thing I'm going to mention is another thing that also balances sweet, salt and nuts. So obviously that was where my food preferences were going last month, and it's the Bark Thin Snacking Chocolate Dark Chocolate Almond with Sea Salt Chocolate Bark. Mouthful. I bought this in New York City. I don't think it's available in the UK. I've certainly never seen it in the UK. And it's this delicious, rich dark chocolate chunks studded with toasted almonds and flecked with sea salt. And slightly bitter chocolate is really richly satisfying, as I find a lot of dark chocolate is. It really makes you feel that you've eaten chocolate and satisfies you very quickly. It's crunchy with the nuts, but also melts in the mouth because of the chocolate, so it has this lovely textural contrast. And it is sweet, but the bitterness of the chocolate and the salt means that it's not overwhelmingly so. It's really good, and I would have bought another packet if I'd known how delicious it was going to be. That's so satisfying, both on a taste and on a textural level. Really good. Those were my food favourites for the month of June. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you next month. Bye!